Is it possible that the only creatures who truly possess a soul are the ones we kill for food, enslave for labor, and drive into the mud of our battlefields? That is the uncomfortable, jagged shard of a question that lodges itself in your throat when you truly confront the work of Franz Marc. We are not talking about a painter of pretty postcards here. We are not discussing a man who painted ponies for the nursery walls of the bourgeoisie, or sentimental illustrations for nature magazines. We are talking about a mystic, a prophet, and a soldier who looked at the rotting edifice of Western civilization in the early 20th century and decided that the only way to find God was to turn his back on humanity and look into the eyes of a horse. To understand Franz Marc is to understand that art is not a mirror of reality. It is a hammer meant to shatter it. He is the tragic prince of German Expressionism, a man who built a cathedral of color and light only to have it shelled into oblivion by the artillery of the First World War. To grasp the magnitude of what Marc achieved, you have to strip away your modern cynicism. You have to transport your mind back to the nervous, vibrating energy of Munich in the years before 1914. The world was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Industrialization was eating the landscape. The cities were choking on soot, noise, and spiritual emptiness. The old gods of religion were dying, replaced by the new gods of steel, money, and speed. In this climate of materialism and decay, Franz Marc did not seek to document the ugliness like his contemporaries in other expressionist movements who painted the prostitute, the street lamp, and the drunkard. He did not want to wallow in the gutter. He wanted to transcend it. He sought a spiritual purity that he believed had been completely eradicated from the human race. And where did he find this purity? He found it in the rhythmic breathing of the animal. This is the core concept you must grapple with: pantheism. For Marc, God was not a bearded man in the clouds judging human morality. God was a force, a blood current that flowed through the veins of a deer, the muscles of a tiger, and the arching neck of a blue horse. He believed in the total animation of the universe. When you look at his canvases, you are not seeing a picture of a cow in a field. You are seeing a unified field of energy where the animal and the landscape are made of the same spiritual substance. The curve of the horse's flank is continued in the curve of the hill. The yellow of the cow is the same frequency as the yellow of the sunlight. There is no separation. There is only a vibrating hum of existence. He called this the animalization of art. He wanted to paint not at the animal, as a human observer, but from the animal. He asked the impossible question regarding how a horse sees the world, or if the eagle sees the same mountains we do, and he spent his short, burning life trying to paint the answer. Let us get technical about his color, because this is where the intellect of the man shines through the mysticism. Marc did not just pick colors because they looked nice. That is the approach of a decorator, not an expressionist. He developed a rigorous, almost theological theory of color that he shared with his friend and co-conspirator, Wassily Kandinsky. In their movement, the Blue Rider, color was a language with a specific grammar and vocabulary. Marc wrote famously to his friend August Macke about his system, and you must understand this code if you want to decode his work. Blue serves as the male principle. It is severe, spiritual, and intellectual, representing the color of the sky and the mind. That is why his famous horses are blue. They are not merely horses, but avatars of spiritual strength and masculine gentleness, saints with hooves. Yellow acts as the female principle, gentle, cheerful, and sensual, the color of the earth and of joy. His yellow cows and tigers are not just farm animals or predators, but goddesses of fertility bounding through a landscape that seems to be dancing with them. Finally, red represents matter. It is the heavy, brutal weight of the earth, the color of violence and gravity against which the spirit of blue and the joy of yellow must constantly fight. When you stand before a Marc painting, you are watching a combat zone. You are watching blue and yellow link arms to hold back the brutality of red. It is a chromatic war for the soul of the world. This is not hyperbole. This is the literal mechanics of his composition. He orchestrates these colors with the precision of a composer, creating chords and dissonances that are meant to vibrate in the viewer's optic nerve and, by extension, their soul. The interplay is active. If the red dominates, the painting feels heavy, oppressive, and earthly. If the blue dominates, the painting feels airy, transcendent, and free. But Marc's style did not stay static. It evolved with a terrifying velocity. In his earlier works, the forms are round, soft, and harmonious. The animals are sleeping or grazing in a sort of rhythmic womb. Everything flows. It is the Garden of Eden before the fall. But as the clouds of war began to gather over Europe, the geometry of his paintings began to fracture. He encountered the work of the Cubists in Paris and the Futurists in Italy. He saw how Robert Delaunay used light to break the world into prisms. Marc took this shattered aesthetic and applied it to his spiritual vision. The result is what art historians call his crystalline style. The soft curves of the horses are replaced by sharp, jagged angles. The landscape turns into a cave of diamonds. The animals are no longer safe in the meadow. They are trapped inside a prism of refracting light. This is visually spectacular, but emotionally, it is deeply unsettling. It implies that the unity of creation is cracking. The spiritual world is being subjected to a pressure it cannot withstand. The innocence of the beast is being sliced apart by the sharp edges of the modern intellect. There is a distinct phase in his work where the harmony is gone and the world is exploding. Sharp diagonal rays of blood red and steel gray slash across the canvas like machetes. The blue horses are looking up and baying at the sky in terror. The green forest is being leveled as if by an invisible artillery barrage. It is a scene of total apocalypse. Marc was painting premonitions. He was painting the psychic atmosphere of a continent that was unconsciously preparing for suicide. The animals in these later works are no longer symbols of peace. They are victims. They are the collateral damage of a cosmic struggle between forces they cannot comprehend. We must address the elephant in the room, or rather, the wolf. Marc's view of humanity was bleak, and it grew bleaker as he aged. He famously said that people, with their lack of piety, especially men, never touched his true feelings, but animals, with their virginal sense of life, awakened all that was good in him. This is a sentiment that resonates powerfully today. In our age of ecological collapse and industrial farming, Marc was the first artist to truly side with the non-human. He looked at the human face and saw a mask of deceit. He looked at the snout of a tiger and saw absolute honesty. He realized that the animal lives in a continuous present, unconnected to the anxieties of the past or the future, whereas the human is cursed with the knowledge of time and death. However, do not make the mistake of thinking Marc was a pacifist hippie. He was a complex, conflicted German man of his time. When the First World War broke out in 1914, he actually volunteered. This is the great tragedy and the great irony of his life. Like many intellectuals of that era, he believed that the war would be a cleansing fire. He thought that Europe was so sick, so old, and so corrupt that only a great cataclysm could burn away the rot and allow a new spiritual society to rise from the ashes. He went to war not to kill, but to purify. He viewed the conflict in metaphysical terms as a necessary surgery for a dying civilization. He took his sketchbook into the trenches. He drew in the mud. And there, amidst the horror of industrial slaughter, his art changed again. In his final sketchbook, the sketchbook from the field, the animals disappear completely. There are no more horses. There are no more deer. There is only pure, abstract energy. He realized that the animal was no longer a sufficient vessel for the spirit in a world that had gone completely mad. The innocence of the creature could not survive the gas attacks and the machine guns. He moved toward total abstraction, pure form, pure force. He was on the verge of a breakthrough that would have rivaled the late works of Kandinsky or Rothko. He was moving beyond the physical world entirely, seeking a visual language that had no reference to earthly things, but he never got the chance to paint those pictures on canvas. In 1916, during the Battle of Verdun, the longest and bloodiest battle of the war, Franz Marc was sent on a reconnaissance mission. He was patrolling on horseback, ironically enough. A shell splinter struck him in the head, killing him instantly. He was 36 years old. The government had actually issued an order to withdraw him from the front line, recognizing him as a national treasure who needed to be saved for the sake of German art. The order arrived a few days too late. The loss of Franz Marc is one of the great open wounds of art history. If he had lived, he would have likely become the greatest abstract painter of the 20th century. He had the intellect, the passion, and the technical mastery to push painting into realms we can only imagine. Instead, he left us with a body of work that feels like a beautiful, unfinished sentence. A cry cut short. So why does he matter to you? Why should you, a person living in the digital noise of the 21st century, care about a dead German who painted blue horses? He matters because we are suffering from the exact same sickness that he diagnosed 100 years ago. We are severed from the world. We look at nature as a resource to be exploited, or a backdrop for a selfie. We have lost the virginal sense of life. We are trapped in the prison of our own intellect, obsessed with technology, disconnected from the rhythms of the earth. Marc's paintings act as a corrective lens. They force us to stop. They force us to shut up. They demand that we look at the world not with the arrogant gaze of the conqueror, but with the humble, wide-eyed wonder of the prey. When you look at the curve of a tiger in a Marc painting, notice the tension. It is a tension between the flat, two-dimensional surface of the canvas and the deep, three-dimensional spirituality of the subject. He uses a technique often called transparency or interpenetration. The forms overlap. The deer is not in front of the tree. The deer and the tree are passing through each other. This is a visual metaphor for his philosophy. In the true reality, there are no boundaries. We are all permeable. The atoms that make up your body are the same atoms that make up the star and the stone. Marc painted the physics of the soul. He showed that separation is an illusion created by the human ego. He also reclaimed the concept of the beautiful. In modern art, beauty is often a dirty word. We are taught to value the shocking, the political, the conceptual. Marc was not afraid of beauty, but his beauty is not the shallow beauty of a fashion magazine. It is a terrible beauty. It is the beauty of a storm or a predator. It is the beauty of a system that is perfectly balanced but utterly indifferent to human ego. His colors sing, but they sing a song that is older than humanity and will outlast us. Consider his woodcuts. In addition to his oil paintings, Marc was a master of the graphic arts. He looked back to the medieval German tradition of woodblock printing. In these black and white images, the struggle is stripped down to its bones. There is no color to seduce you. There is only the stark contrast of black ink and white paper. In works like The Tiger or Creation of the Horses, you see the incredible power of his design. He coils the energy of the animal into a tight spring. The lines are thick, primitive, and potent. They possess a raw folk art energy that feels ancient, as if they were carved by a tribesman in the Black Forest 1,000 years ago. This connection to the primitive was essential for the Expressionists. They believed that by looking back to simpler times in simpler forms, they could bypass the corruption of the modern academy. Let us also speak of his relationship with Kandinsky. These two men were the twin poles of Der Blaue Reiter. Kandinsky was the brain, the theorist, the intellectual, the man who moved toward abstraction through music and mathematics. Marc was the heart, the mystic, the lover of the earth, the man who moved toward abstraction through empathy with nature. They balanced each other. They wrote the Blow Rider Almanac together, a manifesto that argued for a new art that would unify all creative expression, painting, music, theater, folk art, under the banner of the spiritual. They were idealists of the highest order. They truly believed that art could save the world. It is a heartbreakingly naive belief in retrospect, but their sincerity gives the work a burning intensity that is lacking in the cynical art of today. There is a specific painting technique Marc used that deserves close attention. He did not blend his colors smoothly like a Renaissance painter. He applied them in broad, flat planes, often with sharp edges. This is the Cubist influence, yes, but Marc softened it. He made the edges glow. He created a sensation of stained glass. In fact, many of his paintings look like stained glass windows for a cathedral of nature. The light seems to come from behind the canvas, illuminating the colors from within. This creates a religious experience for the viewer. You are not looking at light reflecting off an object. You are looking at the inner light of the object itself. The blue horse became his signature motif, but it became something of a burden to his legacy. People tend to see it as whimsical. It is not whimsical. The blue horse is a tragic figure. It stands alone, often with its head bowed, bearing the weight of spiritual awareness. It is a lonely creature. It represents the isolation of the spiritual seeker in a material world. In some paintings, the blue horse looks out at the viewer with an expression of gentle accusation. It asks why you have forsaken your connection to the whole. It is a symbol of the burden of consciousness. In his later, more abstract works, such as Fighting Forms, the animals have dissolved into swirling vortexes of color. Here we see the pure combat of red and black against blue. It is a visual representation of energy itself. It anticipates the work of the abstract expressionists who would emerge in New York 30 years later. Marc was decades ahead of his time. He was painting the energy of the atom before we knew how to split it. He was painting the chaos of the psyche before we had fully mapped it. If you want to understand the tragedy of the 20th century, look at the arc of Franz Marc's career. It starts with a dream of unity, the blue horse in the green field. It moves into a realization of fracture, the crystalline, broken landscape, and it ends in a scream of destruction, the falling trees and the exploding earth. He documented the suicide of Europe not with words but with color. Do not let the prettiness of the colors fool you. This is art with teeth. It is art that demands you strip off your clothes, your phone, your job title, and your social status, and stand naked in the rain. It asks you to remember that you are an animal. It asks you to remember that you are made of stardust and mud. It challenges the arrogance of the anthropocentric worldview, the idea that humans are the center of the universe. Marc tells us that we are just one part of a great, swirling, colorful choir, and that we are currently singing out of tune. To engage with Franz Marc is to engage with a ghost. He haunts the history of art like a specter of lost potential. But his work is not dead. It vibrates with a livingness that is rare. When you stand in a museum in front of the large blue horses, you can feel the heat coming off the canvas. You can feel the thumping of a giant, benevolent heart. It is a message in a bottle from a man who saw the end of the world coming and tried to paint a way out of it. He failed to save the world, of course. Art cannot stop a bullet. But he succeeded in creating a sanctuary. He built a place where the spirit can go to rest, to heal, and to remember what it feels like to be whole. In a fragmented, distracted, and cynical age, the pantheistic mysticism of Franz Marc is not just a historical curiosity. It is a necessary medicine. It is a reminder that the world is magic, that color is power, and that if we are quiet enough and humble enough, we might just be able to hear the song of the earth again. So the next time you see a blue horse, do not smile and think it is cute. Stop. Let the blue enter your eyes. Let the severity and the spirituality of that color wash over you. Recognize it for what it is. A desperate, beautiful prayer for a world that deserves to be better than it is. Franz Marc died in the mud of Verdun so that these horses could live forever in the fields of our imagination. Do not dishonor his sacrifice by looking at them with anything less than total awe. He painted the soul of the beast to save the soul of the man. The question remains, is it too late for us to listen?